Hey guys, welcome to Redline Motorsport. Today we have the NSX Cup at Suzuka. So this is the first of 4 rounds for this mini cup championship. So everyone is going to be in their NSX Honda NSX Cup car. So it should be all pretty good fun. Today I have got 3 other commentators with me. So I've introduced George first. How are we doing, George?
All good. And you, Simon? Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited for Suzuka, obviously. I mean, another round at Suzuka. Last time we were here was for the 12 hours. So this time in an all manufacturer series, I'm amped.
Awesome stuff. We also have Mike with us. How are we doing, Mike?
Yeah, also doing awesome. I totally agree with George here. It'd be really interesting to see how these guys handle Suzuka with just the single car rather than having a whole bunch of different cars on the track. So should be a good race today.
Yeah, awesome stuff. We also have Thomas with us. He's the first time commentating with us this time, so this will be easy with him. But how are we doing, Thomas?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm excited to get this underway. After stewarding the 12-hour and a couple of other races, I'm excited to get on this side of the bench and see what happens.
Excellent stuff. So I just want to say we've got just over 6 minutes 40 seconds of the free practice before we jump straight into a qualifying, which I believe is 15 minutes. Oh, I actually did this, but yeah, I think it's 15 minutes qualify, and then we've got a 60-minute race. We also have a mandatory pit stop in this race as well, so these guys will have to go in for a pit stop and change tyres. Other than that, yeah, it should be a pretty awesome race here with the Hondas at Suzuka. So take it away, please, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for that, Simon. I've been watching these guys come around the track here during practice, and we're currently watching Ismail Labricue here, and I've actually just noticed down on the bottom of the screen he his liveries. So me and Ishmael have been talking on Discord about his liveries. I noticed he put Mike Jones Livery Academy as his team name because Ishmael has quite generally just ran like a nice metallic black livery. So he's out here in this colorful mobile today after our chat on Discord the other day. And I got to say, I like it. George, I know you're a huge fan of liveries. What do you think about this bright one here?
I'm a fan of liveries, I'm a fan of colors, and this ticks off all the boxes that I would choose in picking a livery for my team. And the fact that he represents you, Mike, he's added some extra points onto the board. So Labricue will be added onto my to watch list for sure. And if you can't see him on track, then there's something that's wrong with your eyesight for sure. I mean, look at this car coming through. It really is going to stand out on the track wherever it's going. And I think that's kind of the point of liveries overall, is to get something that kind of stands up, something that people recognize you by if you are trying to appeal to the fans. If you're just racing just for the sake of racing, well, that's your own thing. But in my case, I would definitely paint a car bright colors to try and attract the commentator's eye on my side. Thomas, do you paint your cars bright?
I tend to try and go for a kind of fluorescent yellow like he's done, and I try and kind of mix that in with a nice silver, much like you see highwaymen on the side of the road, just to make sure that you don't get hit in traffic. So hopefully he should be going through the field nicely, as everyone will be getting out of his way, moving their wing mirrors away so they don't get blinded by the brightest livery I think I've ever seen on this game. It is quite nice. I actually quite like it. I like the odd liveries, especially kind of harks back to the early 90s Formula One kind of liveries where they're a bit weird and wacky with the strange sponsorships. But now we've gone back to Christian, what's that, Manu, in #1 place right now in free practice. We don't know what kind of runs he's been doing, whether he's been doing qualifying or race practice so far. But he's got a much nicer, I say much nicer, he's got a black and red livery, much like our own. What do you think of that then, George?
Yeah, I think black and red is definitely the way to go when you're going for a default racing livery. And if you want something to stand out, black and red is always the way to go. I think I've got many black and red liveries in my collection of cars. And from my side, free practice is also an indication of just kind of what guys are doing out on the track. It's nothing to really give us viable information over to the qualifying sessions, but it's always good to see how the guys are handling the circuits. And I think the home circuit of the Honda here at Suzuka, definitely quite a cool combo featuring out on this track.
Yeah, I totally agree, George. It's going to be a really interesting race. I mean, like I said, we had, that 12-hour race recently. For the people who follow us, you'll have known that. And it's now going to be really interesting to see a single manufacturer car here in comparison to having a lot of we had a lot of Astons, there was a lot of Mercs on the field for our 12-hour. So having just this single manufacturer here at Suzuka, I think is going to bring in a lot of competition, and especially in a 60-minute race. I mean, as we know with these guys, this is our pro split. These guys are the best of the best here at RLM, and we should see some awesome competition with all of this. And I'm really hoping for an awesome race. And even just here in free practice, we're obviously seeing the top 10 being within a second of each other, and that's just a little bit of, like George said, just free practice, right? So last time I broadcast and watched qualifying in Hungaroring, we had, I believe, the top 20 within a second of each other or so, and I would not be surprised to see that out of these guys today.
I'm glad that you mentioned that single manufacturer series kind of thing, and the drivers all driving the same cars being the determining factor, coming down to driver's skill. But also comes down to kind of preference, right? If the Honda NSX suits driver style, that's definitely going to capitalize on guys that have not really spent time in the car. I do believe that the NSX is a relatively balanced car in terms of, you can get thrown into it and feel that it's relatively stable. It doesn't have unyieldly handling characteristics that you wouldn't expect of it. And I feel that everybody here, given their skill level, will adapt to it reasonably quick. And I think that as the series progresses as a whole, we'll start to see who really masters it and where they start to shine, because they're going to be in the same car on every single track.
Yeah, to actually counteract what you said, George, as somebody who is going to be participating in this series, but in the Pro-Am Cup, which will come in tomorrow, I normally drive the Ferrari and the Aston. Those are my two main cars, and I've been struggling a little bit with this Honda, actually. It just does not fit the driving style that I'm used to with the Ferrari and the Aston, and so in my case, it's been a bit of an uphill battle practicing here. And then, of course, at Suzuka, Suzuka can be a very nasty track if you get it wrong. Coming in through Spoon, you can easily lose it. And the S's, you can really lose a lot of time there. So it'd be really interesting to see how these guys handle it. Because, yeah, I think it depends on what car you're used to. Because the Ferrari and the Aston drive much, much differently like the Honda. And like you said, it could, depending on the driver's preference, it could not fit their driving style.
Yeah, I come over from the Porsche side. That's my main car. So coming over, when I tried out the Honda, I found it to be a bit of a treat in terms of just not trying to obliterate me all the time. I quite enjoyed the experience of going over to the Honda side of life. Axel Petit, currently on screen at the moment, obviously an accomplished sim driver. I don't think that he's driven too much in the Honda. I'm not quite sure of his experience in it, but obviously Jardia here as well. That's just good names to have a look through the field and see. Guys are not just committing to one series. I mean, Jardia is one of those drivers that, I think he smiles in every car that he drives, and everything that RLM seems to come up with, he throws himself into. Whether it's a Porsche Cup or an NSX Cup or an endurance series, etc., etc. So. I'm pretty excited to see the levels of racing that we get here. And like you said, Suzuka, one of those tracks that isn't easy, and it's one of those tracks that it really is downforce dependent and really grippy at times. So you're going to really want to capitalize on being able to throw the car through the corners and get that exit speed all around so that you can, stay competitive with the rest of the field. And at the end of the day, you can blame the setups, you can blame whatever, but it won't be able to, you can't just blame the power unit that is sitting behind you. Thomas, your experience with Hondas, do you have much?
Not really. I think most of the time I've tried to stick with the European cars because being part of my racing team, we like to stick with the Aston Martin, like basically easier going cars. We're not very good at racing as much as we love it. We try our best, and the Honda is not exactly a car that we bonded with very well. It's a very docile car into the corner, but wants to bring the back end out in mid corner, and on the outside, when you bring it out of the corner, it doesn't have as much traction as you would expect a car like this to have. And sadly, it's not something that we really got along with. So it's not something I'm used to, but I'm hoping that these pro guys can really give us a good show, and hopefully by the end of the season, we'll have a very Porsche Cup experience where everyone is nose to tail for the hour straight. What do you think about that, Mike?
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I think that it's going to be, an excellent series. I mean, obviously we've got lots of drivers in here, as George was mentioning, right? Like just a few drivers I recognize. Obviously we got Lubomir Zeman in here, recognize him. Obviously Jardia's in here. From George said, Ismail Labouki, we were talking about him earlier. Vincent Ebrich here from the PCDC Motorsports team. He is a very, very quick driver. They finished in the top 3 podium positions of 12-hour Suzuka even. So I think that, here at Suzuka, maybe he'll have a little bit of an advantage, right? Because he did that 12-hour, and I think he's the only one in here that received a podium during that particular event in the pro class, to be fair, and be really interesting to see. And just want to mention, guys, we appreciate all the follows and everything. Obviously, it really helps us out. Feel free to use your Twitch Prime subscription, Amazon Prime subscription to subscribe to us as well. We'll be live a lot more over the next couple of weeks as well. All these NSX Cups will be streamed. Tomorrow we have our Pro-Am event, and this will be a bi-weekly cup. So the next Monday will actually be our AM NSX Cup. And so we'll be streaming all 3. We'll have the Pro-Am and the AM guys all subscribed. So Would appreciate any follows and subscriptions. Help pay for our server costs as needed to bring you these awesome broadcasts and awesome championships. And I think we're going to have a good one. So looks like we had a little bit of a off track there in Richter, who was the first person to come across from his hot lap. And looks like he struggled a little bit to keep that thing on the track, George.
Yeah, I think that at the moment, the guys are all going to be going over, we've gone over to the qualifying session, so everybody now are going to be, feeling the pressure mounting up and, getting on the gas a little bit early with cold tires. They're not quite up to temperature on their first flying lap. They're obviously warmer than they were when they started in the pit box, but at the moment, it's a lot of nerves that are being managed. You've only got 15 minutes to do things, and again, running very wide and going to have to stay wide to allow the drivers behind to get on by without causing any inconvenience to them. So Marcel Richter doing the right thing, just getting off the gas and allowing them through there, and that's going to invalidate his lap, I'm sure, and mean that someone else is going to get a shot at setting the first lap on the board. Of course, he was leading out our pack of excited pro drivers here at Suzuka. Everybody out on track at the moment, bar Jose Lamas and Doricott, who I believe are just still sitting in the pits. And a strategy behind that, possibly just waiting for a little bit more rubber to be put into the track before they decide to go out. So Jardier going to be on screen at the moment. He is currently out on a flying lap, so of course going to be setting a time here. And Jardier, I've said this before, he can drive any car, and I feel like most of the drivers here would be, you could throw them into anything. It could be a ride-on lawnmower, and they would make competitive and fun to watch. So from my side, I'm excited to see, all the racing that these guys bring to us. Jardier going to cross the board, or cross the line at the moment with a 1:59.9, so sub 2 minutes coming out from Jardier. And not going to be rivaled by Witzel behind for his outlap for now.
Yeah, not quite yet. I would expect these guys to potentially even dip into the 158s for qualifying, but an awesome lap coming in. Multiple laps coming in at the 59 mark underneath that 2 minutes for their first hot laps. And as George says, a lot of the times with these cars, you'll see their best laps coming out on lap 2 or 3 of their hot laps. So obviously we've already had quite a few people dip out into those 59s. Now Petit coming out with a 59.667 so far, and a couple people still up on their lap here. For example, Jardier is up a few tenths, looks like 4 tenths currently at this time, so we might see him, of course he's only about halfway through his lap, but we might see him post a little bit of a stronger lap. He's actually still gaining time here a little bit, though as I say that, coming through the hairpin, it looks like he lost a tenth or two. Quite a few people up on their laps here, so would not be surprised, as I said, to see these guys dip into the 58 over the next 9 minutes or so. Actually, Manu, there he goes.
Yeah. He's going to go, he's going to do a 1:59.4 for now. But like you said, these are the first laps out, and they're already just shaving tenths off the previous time set above them. I mean, we commented on Jardier's lap and setting him at pole, and he's already sitting down at fifth. So that just kind of shows the pace that everybody's bringing out, and I expect it to continue as we ride on board with Richter once again, who this time around wanting to set a time on the board, going to come up to the final chicane, and once again missing the braking point for the chicane and diving out. So the nerves sitting on Marcel Richter's shoulders at the moment, and I guess if you let the timer come down, you'll just be happy to qualify at the end of the day, and that's a way to give yourself a bit of self-reward.
Yeah, but as you say that, it looks like Jardier got himself the self-reward. He came across the line 5 tenths faster, taking that provisional P1 again. As we watched Ismail come across the line, he posted a 2-minute.0, but Jardier came across the line with a 59.3. And that said, Manu coming down into the final chicane, doesn't look like he's up on his lap yet. He's about even, but diving into that chicane 2 tenths up now. This has the potential, if he can get out of this corner, to take back that provisional pole position. Currently a 10th up. He's going to be coming across the timing line here, but it doesn't look like he will get it. Looks like he lost that time coming out. And indeed, actually he gained a little bit, but just not quite enough. He's going to post that 59.394 and be just hundredths of a second off of Jardier. And they have another 8 minutes here to post laps. I'm sure Jardier will come back out at some point. Actually, looks like he's already back out on the track to try to chase down those future laps as we're now watching Andrea Rubies come across the track here, Tom.
Yeah, it seems to me that a lot of the cars are suffering from a bit of dirty air. Whenever I was seeing anyone go off track getting their time validated, it seemed to be when they were close up behind someone else. So I think that's going to play a big part even when we get to the race. I hope not, because I want to see some close racing. You see Axel Petit get past one of the guys just setting up for a lap. And he's just entered the pits.
Yep, wasn't his lap that time, but he's got plenty of time. 7 minutes left to perhaps change something on the setup or something and come back out. So wouldn't be surprised to see him back out on the track. He is not one to give up, and he will not settle for that top 5 right away. He'll want to come back out on the track and push some more laps down. But watching Rubies here, he is currently a 10th up, just out of Spoon Corner. Coming down the straight here, we'll see him dive into the chicane shortly and see if he can pick up a 10th or 2. Not quite in line to get down to that 59 and a half mark or so, but we'll see what he does come down the corner. Currently running a 59.7, and so that will potentially, depending on how many hundreds he pick him up a position as he comes across the timing line. It will pick him up the position, a 59.679, just barely squeezing out of Kevin Niles there, and a good lap by him, pick up another position. And looks like we're going back to Ishmael here in the Crayola Mobile, George. He is currently a couple tenths up. I can talk today.
Yeah, the Mike Jones Livery Academy NSX, unfortunately suffering from a bit of the commentator's curse, doubled on it, as invalidates his lap and jumps back to the pits as we go back on board with Daniele Brambile in the number 727 Honda. Currently sitting in 14th place on the grid. Provisionally, of course, there's 5 minutes 30 remaining of this qualifying session before these guys go over to the race. So anything can change up. At the moment, guys are still hunting down those 158s that Mike has set them the targets. Mike, if they don't get 158s, will you be disappointed in them?
Disappointed. If this was a non-cup race, I would be a little disappointed. I mean, I think that everybody should be capable of hitting that. Well, I say everybody. These pro drivers, because I ain't one of them, should be possible hitting that 158 mark. But at this point, with it being a cup race, obviously not everybody, has a setup quite dialed in for this Honda, because perhaps they don't run it quite as often. But I'm pretty happy to see them get pretty close down. Of course, Jardier out. Looks like I believe this is a hot lap here. So he's currently a 10th up, coming out of the hairpin, will be coming in the Spoon shortly. So there is even more potential time to gain here. He's one of the few people that are up on the board at the moment. A couple people farther back in the pack, such as Merrick Bonds, a couple tenths up, but back in 17th position. So we'll see if Jardier can get down a couple more tenths here, as he is getting close to finishing this lap. And
you gotta
see how he posts.
You gotta love Jardier. He's not one to back down and just accept a qualifying time as we jump down to the split of view, which I'm glad we got to see again, because it kind of capitalizes and shows you an vantage point of how these Hondas go through the curbs. I mean, they eat curbs up. And going through the chicane, you see Jardier doing just that. He still kept that 10th up. So this could be a 159.2 coming out from the pole sitter for now, securing himself a little bit of breathing room down to Christian Manu. And he does do a 159.175. Absolutely dirty, disgusting lap coming out. And it will be time to put that car back into the pits, because those tires will be on fire.
Yeah, interestingly, as we were watching Jardier come across the line, I was watching Alexander Wetzel in P3. He had a few tenths there on the screen and he didn't quite make it across the line with that. I think he had a little struggle coming out of the chicane, possibly, so he lost that time. Still at that 59.4 mark, but of course he's on another hot lap. He's another 10th up. As we switch over to Mr. Axel Petit here, he is again a couple tenths up. He's been chipping away at this time, coming down into this chicane shortly. Still 2 tenths up on this. He has the potential to pick up that final podium position out of qualifying, and actually he just nailed that chicane. Now almost a half a second up. That could put him at a provisional pole if he can get a good run here, but looks like he's losing just a touch of time, but he's still 3 tenths up, and he's crossing the timing line now. Looks like he's going to post a 1:59.4. Not quite enough for that second place, 6 thousandths of a second off second place, but an awesome lap by him, and that puts him up into that 3rd place. But again, now this seems to be what happens. These guys see 2 minutes left on the clock, and now I'm seeing everybody in the top 10 is a couple tenths up, because we just switched over to Christian Manu here, Thomas, and he is another 2 tenths up, which could, if he holds this, put him at a provisional pole ahead of Jardier.
It's really fantastic to watch these guys. This isn't even the main part of the stream or the entire weekend. We're just dealing with 10 minutes or 15 minutes of practice, and I'm already enjoying myself so much watching them swap times back and forth, trying to grab that 1st place. At the moment, we have the top 15 within a second of the pole time, and they're still getting faster. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. They're really understanding the car now, where they can attack the curbs, where they can go wide, where they can grab a bit of time from the car in front going down the straight. And you can really see that with their qualifying setups, how much traction they're getting off of the corner. It's truly outstanding to see how fast they are making these Hondas NSXs going around this track.
Yeah,
Christian Manu.
Go ahead, George.
Sorry, Mike. I was going to say Christian Manu was 3 tenths up on his time before he came into the hairpin, and he lost it all right at the end there. So, I mean, if you look at what his time was sitting at, if he had managed to get through that hairpin without scrubbing off so much time, he would have taken that provisional pole. So that's where it comes down to that last lap pressure at the end of the day. And like we said, we just love how it heats up right at the end of the quali session. This is where the track is at its optimal. This is where you've got your best shot. You know, everyone's put the rubber onto the surface, and this is really the best shot that you've got to get out. And if you can get in before the timer, you know, it ticks down, you get a free lap extra. It feels like a slight victory to you if you know, up on your lap time to get something in there before, you know, it closes out for the day.
Absolutely, and that's actually exactly what I was going to say. Even with that, him losing that time in the chicane, still picked up a little time there. So he's at that 59.298 mark. But something I wanted to point out, Simon here with our camera switched over to Vincent Ebrich as he came across the line. Vincent Ebrich was in 14th place before he came across the line. He was approximately a 10th faster than his previous lap. He gained 5 positions. That's how tight this qualifying is right now. 5 positions off roughly a 10th. And speaking of a 10th, here comes Christoph Makowski, I'm going to say. He is a 10th up. I don't think this will gain him any positions, but he will gain a little bit of time there and dip under that 59.5 mark with a 4.99. So a good lap by him, and time has expired here in qualifying. So this will be everybody's final laps. Looks like nobody in the top 10 currently up on their lap. Vincent Ebrich is trying here. He's a 10th down. Of course, Ishmael Laberque back in 13th is a couple tenths up, and so is Martin Lornek back in 16th position. They have the potential here, if they can get across the line and stay consistent, to potentially take a few positions, because as I just said, a 10th goes a long way. Look at those timings. Like 16th back is a couple tenths off, and we have, you know, what is that, 15th position within a second, and look at all that, like 0.7, 0.8, 0.8, 0.9, 0.9, 0.9. A 10th goes a long way here, George.
Yeah, a 10th goes a long way. I mean, 100th goes a long way even. And that's what we're kind of expecting to see in the mid-pack of what we're going to get into after this qualifying session closes up. You know, when it comes into it, you know, you've got your front runners and you've got your mid-pack. At the end of the day, there's cars racing on the track all the time, and everybody's racing for a position. There's a sense of pride in getting past somebody that started ahead of you, and everybody is going to be chasing down, you know, that glory and that feeling. As I believe that will conclude our qualifying session for now. I don't see anybody else out on track that is up on their time. So if there are cars just kind of finishing their out laps, they'll return to the pits, and drivers will be able to start to prep up their, they'll start to prep their race setups. Obviously going over from quali to race, you've got an hour to now provision for the fuel balance, as well as decide what you want to do and make, usage of your pit strategy that you've got to factor in. It's just, racing is exciting because there's so many things to factor in at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely, George. I mean, it's they'll have a few minutes here, as you said, qualifying wrapping up now, and then they should have some pre-race time to adjust that. Be interesting to see how long they, with the mandatory pit stop, do they decide to run lower fuel, or do they decide if they want to, go ahead and just make a quick stop and go and toss for it? Because there is no mandatory requirements for this pit stops as they come across. So it should be really interesting to see how people's strategies will go here. And we are now seeing them on the starting grid. You'll see a couple cars that kind of look like they're up on jacks there. That usually means they're in their setup screen. And that should allow them to go ahead, get their final adjustments made, put the fuel in, as George said, perhaps adjust tire pressures for any slight differences in temperature. And as the cars are doing this, we actually have a little bit of a treat from Mr. Ryan Gill, who is going to go over a Suzuka here for us with a little bit of a track guide.
Welcome to the Suzuka International Racing Course, located just 35 miles southwest of Nagoya on the Japanese coast. The 3.6-mile circuit, built in 1962 and last changed in 2009, has 18 corners and a lap record of 2 minutes 0.455 set by BMW in 2019. Overtaking isn't difficult here, and the first chance you'll have is down the start-finish straight and into turn 1, assuming you're braver on the brakes than your opponents.
That was fine, yeah.
Turn 11 is one of the slowest corners on the track, but that doesn't mean you can't overtake there, as a good line out of turn 10 will see you on the inside of your opponents. And turn 16, a short run after 130R means that your braking point will be critical for this incredibly tight chicane towards the end of the circuit.
All right, Ryan, thank you for that. We really appreciate that. Of course, Mr. Ryan Gill, one of our stewards and commentators here with RLM. You'll see him often commentating. He likes to put these track guides together for us. A little bit of informational for the viewers and perhaps even the drivers for this here. And just before we start here, it looks like about 2.5 minutes left on this pre-race time. And I would say at this point here, Simon, if you want to prep your cameras for this, it might be a little bit of a time to go down the grid and take a look at these drivers that will be with us here today for this NSX Pro Cup. And George, are you back yet?
Yeah, I'm back here.
Excellent. Would you like to go over the grid with me here?
Yeah, just let you guys know it is through the second camera, so guys, I am ready.
Of course, yeah. So I'll go over the first few here. So, of course, we have Jardier taking that pole position. He did end up with that in first place. Following him on the second position will be Alexander Wetzel, and then coming into third be Christian Manu in the number 7. 996 of Axel Petit in fourth position. Christoph Mikowski, of course, finished up in that fifth position with the good lap that he put down there towards the end. And George, why don't you take it from fifth place back?
Yeah, so Christoph Mikowski in fifth. Andrea Rubis managed to get sixth. Kevin Niles will start in seventh. Luca Burke in eighth. Ismail Labricu in ninth. Vincent Ebrich will round up the top 10. Do you want to go down the rest of the order as well, Simon?
If you want to, that's up to you. I can just pan the camera down through the middle. That's fine. I'll just pan it down.
So we got Sam Lavender in 11th, Lubenor Zeman in 12th, Carl Eastwood in 13th, Martin Lorick in 14th, David Mame in 15th, Daniele Brambrile in 16th, Stephen Kui in 17th, Nicola Rokia in 18th, Marek Voins in 19th, Jose Lamas in 20th, Andras Shark in 21st, Joseph Varga in 22nd, Alexander Doricott in 23rd, Dustin Wust in 24th, Christian Hanna in 25th, Stephen Wust in 26th, Andre Decker in 27th, Marcel Richter in 28th, Sebastian Alexandria in 29th, and Madzo will start in 30th.
Yeah, so be prepared for me and George to butcher names all stream long. We try our best, guys. So if we get your name wrong, really apologize. But we do try our best. Obviously, especially with some of the people who race here often, we kind of get used to people's names. But, you know, we are just humble commentators here. We try our best with names. So if we get your names wrong, we really apologize. But we're trying our best as we see these guys come out of their starting grid positions here. Jardier gonna lead them down in a full formation lap here in Japan with the Honda NSX Cup. And we should get racing here in probably about, I'd say 3 to 4 minutes. It's a bit of a long track, obviously, and these guys will be moving pretty slow, wiggling around, trying to get some heat into those tires, perhaps getting some heat into the brakes as well, because those a bit inexperienced with ACC may not know, but the tire warming procedures during the formation lap do actually work. If you wiggle around, if you hit your brakes, it will put some temperature into those things, and it is important to get as much temperature as possible, especially here at Suzuka, because turn one, George, at Suzuka, with cold tires, it can get a little rough. That's normally a trail braking corner. if you got cold tires, it's interesting.
Yeah, first curve, second curve, it's like an extended long right-hander. You've got plenty of cars all around you. Everybody, you know, in terms of the car's capabilities will have similar braking points, but as drivers, you know, they'll probably vary. You do want to get yourself a good start here. It's very difficult to make passing maneuvers, and you do rely on people making errors where you can then capitalize on their bad exit speeds. So everybody here will have the same sort of mindset there. They obviously have an hour-long race ahead of them, so they will be preparing themselves mentally to, you know, to a full stint out here tonight. And it's not one in the first corner or the first and second curve. Neither is it one in the S curves. It's one by the driver that manages to make it to the end at the end of the day. And it you know, an early incident is just something that everybody here will be wanting to avoid. Mike and Thomas, I want to propose a little tradition. Obviously, favoritisms and things aren't promoted unless it's for Porsches, but we are allowed to make predictions on race winners and who you want to see do well. And I'm going to start things off. I'm not going to pick a pole sitter, but Axel Petit is someone that I want to follow along here. He's starting back in 4th position. So from my side, that's my prediction. Thomas, I want to hear your side first, and we'll let the American choose last.
After qualifying, I think there was quite a lot of potential coming from Manu in the number 7 car. He's in 3rd place, so he's on the same side of Jardier. If he can follow him through turn 1 and stay behind him, I reckon he could do something pretty special in this 1 hour. What do you think, Mike?
You know, I agree. Wetzel should be a strong competitor here. He will not be my pick, though. I do believe that Vincent Ebridge, starting back in 10th position, part of the TCDC Motorsports team, I think that he is going to work his way up. He's a very, very fast and consistent driver, and I think that he will be one to watch for coming up the grid here. Even within the first 20 minutes, I would not be surprised to see him start picking up some positions. So he'll be on my watch list as the grid is going to stack up here. Of course, we are coming down into the final chicane. We are going to stack up 2 by 2 as the grid forms up for that green flag. Coming into the final chicane now should be green flag momentarily here for the first race in our NSX Pro Cup. And it's going to be one heck of an exciting race. We're watching all these cars come through as we switch over to our cam from the helicopter here. Jardier gonna lead them down to the starting line. You can see these guys eager, ready to go. Of course, that back in 3rd place there, or 4th place there, Mr. Petit revving his motor, ready to roll. These guys look like they are in position coming up to the starting line. There is position, I believe, starting box 5 and then 3. And then position 1, here comes the green flag, and there they go, off into turn 1. Jardier getting a good start there, but it looks like the kind of black car back there, can't remember exactly who that was.
Manu.
A little bit of a run. That's Manu. Yeah, he had to get back a little bit there, but this is a very clean turn 1 here. Don't see any incidents. Of course, Jardier still leading the pack there as they come.
No, that's Witzel. That's Witzel up at the front. Witzel
is
got
that Witzel
ahead of
at the
Jardier.
front?
Jardiers made
Oh.
contact there. There's been a bit of contact coming back. It looks like only one car involved in that. Everybody else managing to get on by. That will be Jardier. He's got onto the curb. He's made side-by-side contact with, I believe that was Petit. And unfortunately for him, he's been sent off the track. But everybody else, seeing what's happened in front of them and managing to jump back down through. So Petit does get through. He's up into 3rd place. He's got Manu up in front of him for 2nd. Witzel is running away up in 1st place. It looks like Rubus is that red and black NSX that is chasing down on Petit for 4th. But there's just a hive of cars coming down into the hairpin, Thomas.
Oh, it's just that start. I think we did the anti-commentator's curse. I think Jardier was the one person that we didn't mention. He was the one that came out worst out of that first lap, or first sector, should I say. As we watch kind of the fluorescent yellow car, he's going side by side with that black car. I'm trying to figure out what cars those are. But it looks like the front pack, or at least the leader, has gotten away from the rest of the cars due to that contact. If he can keep that going. And now we're on board with, sorry, I can barely see that name. It's the Mike Jones Academy car, I believe. He's actually, if he's holding up or just gained a position on the car behind him. He's looking up the inside of 130R. That's kind of a dangerous place to on your first lap in an hour race, but he kindly backs out of that. I would back out of that as well. It's the one car looking around his outside. They're still battling all the way around this first lap. Thought they would have stretched it out by now. As we go further back, and there's still going 2 by 2, even though we've nearly made it to the end of lap 1. As Witzel is still in the lead. He's gained quite a lot of positions. Do you think anyone can come and catch him, George?
Yeah, I mean, Witzel's got the run away. It's the battle down with Labracu and Erbrich that seems to be a little bit of a bottleneck in the pack of cars behind. We're right on board with Erbrich as he gets by on Labracu, who's made a bad exit out of that 2nd curve. And of course now, Erbrich was bottled up behind Labracu on that previous lap. So if Erbrich can capitalize on this and get away, maybe Labracu will hold up on Burke and Niles behind for 8th and 9th. And this is the battle for 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. The numbers go down. Mike, as far as the eye can see, as Jesse would say, you can see Honda NSXs.
Yeah, you can see Honda NSXs just everywhere here. Surprise, surprise. It is a Honda NSX Cup. And oh, nope, that was just a little bit of lag. I was going to say, I think I saw the green car shoot off the track there, but maybe just a little bit of lag on the stream. So everything is okay. Don't worry. But yeah, we're watching the rear splitter cam from Burke here as they are coming across into Spoon. I believe this will be here shortly. And they are just kind of all single file at this point. Not a lot of jiggling at this point. But that said, you'll notice here, George and Thomas, who was my pick that started back in 10th position. It looks like he might be back up in 6th now.
Yeah, Mike, we'll wait until the end of the race before we start counting our horses. And with 56 minutes of racing to go, there's plenty of time for work to be done. We're going to ride on the rear-facing splitter cam from Jose Lamas as he's got, I believe that's Doricat, right up behind him as these two go through that final chicane as they make their way down the start-finish line. That's the battle for 17th and 16th, or sorry, 15th and 16th, as there was a slow NSX on the exit that got involved in things. Nicola Riccia. That name has caught me unawares, but the number 85 NSX going to be...
Yeah, sorry, we lost our local stream just briefly. A little bit of a quality issue, guys. So it should be coming back up here very momentarily.
I mean, for now, Witzel will still lead. Obviously, Manu in second. We're still on board with Rokia, that number 85, the blue and red NSX. Switching over to Burke, who seems to be chasing down on Labraku. We did say that Labraku was perhaps bottling up the pack behind. It looks like Burke has seemed to get away from Niles and Eastwood. Eastwood, that's green and yellow NSX. Oh, on the inside here, that's going to be a bit of a dive coming in. And Lavender, I believe, is that Lavender that got through that?
I believe that was the Raccia? Yeah, the 85 car.
No, you're right. He came right on the inside there and literally just took the position for free. And luckily, we had, sort of that driver awareness through the hairpin there to give room, because going 2x2 into the hairpin on that outside line, you definitely are giving space to the driver coming on the inside. It's a good bit of driver awareness.
Yeah, just an excellent pass by him, and we're still watching this fight go on between, roughly 6th to 8th place here. They're all pretty close to each other coming into the final chicane here. Of course, this will be Ishmael Labraku and Luca Burke following each other onto the front straight. Ishmael made himself up a few positions already in this race, putting down some good lap time so far. Him and Mr. Ebrich have made up about 5 positions apiece. Ebrich back up to 4th position ahead of these guys already, as we're going to see a little bit of a move here going into turn 1. And they're getting very close. A little bit of a touch there. Ishmael going to be forced off the track just a little bit, and he'll lose that position. And of course, our little bit of a touch, our stewards will review that. As mentioned, we do have blind stewards for this race, so just in case the steward decides that Luca Burke kind of forced that issue a little bit, they will take a look at it and potentially force him to give that position back. But we will see. Either way, some good, hard racing from all of these guys here. And Ishmael, of course, doing an excellent job just getting up off the track and back on, not losing too much time with all of that. So a little bit of Rubbins racing there. Chat hit that right on the head. I think just a little bit of Rubbins racing from my perspective. So not a bad little line. And we will see these guys just continue to fight as we're now switching over to the 3rd and 4th place battle of Mikowski and Vincent Erbich. And again, kind of as I expected earlier, Erbich is already fighting for that podium position. But there is another battle going on here. Well, just battles everywhere. But at this point, we're going back to 10th position, where it looks like there's about 4, 5, 6 cars in a train here. And we're going to potentially look at, not quite. I thought, he's going for the move inside the spoon here. Of course, Lavender went a little bit wide. I think that was Lavender there, but I could be wrong. The broadcast
It was Lavender. It was Lavender.
Yep,
it was Lavender. And Lavender's just bleeding positions there as well, Mike. So one small mistake bleeding wide out of spoon, and Lavender will drop what I think was 4 positions there. So updates down to 14. So Lavender gonna drop all the way down the order. And right on the splitter cam with Doricott, as we see, I believe Labraku seemed to have a bad exit there. So he's dropped down the order. He's now gonna be on that rear facing cam. So something happened coming down towards the chicane for Labraku as Doricott continues to hunt down on, I believe, Jose Yamas in front of him. It's just such tight racing. We warned the viewers that it would be tight throughout the pack. We see a couple of cars jumping into the pits as well. It would be Axel Petit and Lavender who go into the pits. So I'm not sure if they encountered some damage, because it would be kind of early for drivers to be going into the pits at this stage. I think everybody would be trying to get themselves out on track and extend some of their tires for now. But yeah, some early pit stops coming out is going to favor some of these drivers still out on track. So if you started down the order, Thomas, you'll be happy to see cars diving into the pits, right?
Yeah, it's to me that cars up ahead are going in because they don't want to be part of that train anymore. They're seeing cars going off left, right, and centre, and they don't want to be one of the guys that is heading off the track and losing positions. They're better to come in now and get out of the train, change your tyres, and hopefully they will last till the end despite how hard they are racing one another. But if you're at the back, perhaps like Jardir, where you need to make up the positions as quickly as possible, seeing those guys come into the pits and gain that track position when it is so hard to overtake here unless someone makes a mistake, you're going to be really, really hoping that that trend continues. As I'm not sure what position Jade is in now, but I have been watching Richard, it's his name everyone's been struggling with, in 6th place, Rochia, after he took the 2 cars behind him, in front of him in the 3rd sector. He's been slowly catching the guys in front for 4th and 5th, as we now are on board with Martin Lorenk, and he gets really close up behind Niles, and he goes around the inside of 130R, and he's gonna lose another position to Brambilla, I believe. And he comes around the chicane, and everyone seems to have thinned out again, but they are battling really, really close with Lamas and Doricott and Z-Man. Just a big train, they keep changing positions. I don't know how long they're going to continue doing this until they ruin their tyres. Then we jump back on board with Marcel Richter. We saw him in qualifying doing pretty well, and now he's down in 15th. Hopefully he can start making up some positions. So he's got Danek in front, number 48 in 14th position. He seems to be taking it rather easy, and now he's just lost the rear. Oh, so maybe a bit of dirty air there affecting him in the first 2 corners, but he's, well, by the looks of it, in the driving seat, he's pretty calm, looking after the tyres, making sure that he can get to perhaps close to the end of the race to make the use of the next tyres for the end stint. What do you think kind of strategy they'll be going for, Mike?
It's really hard to tell at this point. I think that maybe a couple people will dip into the pits early and go ahead and just throw down an early pit to get out of the train, like you said. But perhaps we will see a lot of these guys pitting around the halfway marker, perhaps right at the end, as we see Stephen Woost here get just a little sideways coming out of it's the final Degner turn. As they come down on the hairpin. Ishmael has dropped back to 17th position. He had a little bit of a rough go there. He must have had some trouble. I didn't see any accidents come across with him, so if he did, he must have lost it himself. But that's... Yes, sir?
I'm just like the around the outside to defend against a corner that Labricu had the inside line against. First was forced out wide. He's going to be forced out wide again into Spoon. I don't think he's going to be able to hold it off here. It's going to come down to the run, but he might have planned this well enough to be into the slipstream as they come down the west straight. I don't think he's got the run at all, and it was a good move by Labricu to eventually get it done. He tried to do it at the hairpin, couldn't quite get it done, but forcing Wurst out wide, and that's what it's all about, putting pressure on the driver in front of you and forcing them into the error, because everybody else here is pretty much on pace to keep up with the car in front of them. So you see all these cars kind of ebb and flow between catching one another, finding the next car that you've match pace with, and we get onboard battles the entire time. And Marcel Richter is going to be in a battle again with Dedek ahead. This time Richter trying to not get oversteery out of the exit of the second curve, but he's not looking too comfortable coming through there. Wants to carry speed into the S's here, but his car is looking like it is not quite in the racing line that he wants to get it round to, but it will be down to where you find your time. It doesn't mean that, if you struggle through the S's, you're not going to be good through the Degners and then into the hairpin. So, it's all about holding on and trying to find a place that you can get work done. And that's the fun of GT3 racing. It's not just moves happening all the time, although in RLM series races with drivers of these kind of skill calibers, we do get moves happening all the time. But generally, you're kind of following for a couple of laps, trying to capitalize on the slip and find a safe way by.
Yeah, you are absolutely right there, George. I mean, this is, like we've been saying for the past, 30 minutes or so talking about this track. It is not easy to pass here. There's a couple of good spots you can kind of pass. Of course, coming into the final chicane, not a bad spot to pass. If you can get a good run down the front straight, you can go down into the first and second curves, potentially get a move done. But the rest of the track can be pretty difficult. So it's always awesome to see people try and make it moves anywhere else onto the track. And you have something, Simon? Okay, sorry. But yeah, so, when we're seeing something I would like to point out is I've been watching the first, second, third positions here. So Weitzel did kind of step off for a minute there, but at this point, it looks like Manu and, of course, Vincent Urbich and even Mikowski behind them have made up some time there. We are not seeing too much of a gap there compared to how it was just a lap or two ago. Of course, the gap between P2 and P3 still pretty, that's a P. The broadcasting tool and the tree are not agreeing with each other. I believe the big time difference there might be between P3 and P4.
Manu and Vitsu are about 3/10 off of each other if you want to switch over to the battle between first and second as well, Simon. I mean, they have closed the gap down to one another once again to literally be in fighting steps. And of course, you'll be in the slipstream if you're tucked up where you are as Christian Manu right now, and Witsel, of course, going to be feeling the pressure of needing to defend. So if that costs either of these two drivers time, Erbrich in third will be able to wind these two in. But it looks like a battle out front here is just in clean air until they catch up with back markers or early pitters. But that's what you want as these two. You want to be able to fight it out between the two of you and not worry about third getting into the way for the moment or having to do this through back markers and traffic. But Witsel coming down into 130R will still hold Manu at bay, and perhaps Witsel having a bit of an issue letting Manu catch right back up to him. But we saw Witsel get away very early on, and Manu's done great to just get back onto the back here. And with 43 minutes to go, not getting an easy race is definitely what we want to see as commentators and viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing this battle go. Alexander Witsel, of course, Team Jardier's #1 haters. I just noticed. So he might be, I'm sure he's a big fan of Jardier. Everybody is. If anybody's ever talked to the guy, he is an awesome dude. But he will not be wanting to compete with him because Jardier is one hell of a driver. So they are spaced out here as we're seeing a little bit of a move down here into the final chicane. Vaughn's going to make up a position. Looks like above Lewis Alexander, work his way into the 19th spot. And that is some battles going on towards the back of the pack as well. Just everybody still stacked up here. As I scroll down my broadcasting tool, I'm seeing so many red and yellow markers, which are telling me that people are within a second or even a half second of each other. And just battles going on everywhere. And this battle, I don't think is going to stop anytime soon. Vincent Urbich did make it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, George.
Sorry, I mean, our battle at the front for the lead, Manu, has snuck his way up there. So Thomas's prediction of Manu having some pace towards the end of qualifying does seem to bode true coming into the race. I mean, he had a big gap to make up to catch Witsel and has now got the move done. So it'll be interesting to see if Manu now manages to extend away from Witsel, if Witsel manages to hold on to the back of Manu. But it was a big gap for Manu to make up, and big work being done.
As I want to prove that I don't have a commentator's curse on my first time out, I really hope that he kind of manages to get away a little bit. As much as I want to see a battle, I don't want to have the curse of Jesse upon me. But during that battle, I was very much watching Abrick's times, and he gained about a second on the guys ahead of him. So if Witsel is slowing down a bit now because Manu has got past him, that can tend to happen when a guy's past you. You kind of ease up a little bit on your driving style, just trying to find a bit of an advantage in a different way, albeit in your tires or your fuel. But let's see if third place can catch up, as I'm not really being able to see the time so well. So back over to you, George.
Yeah, so Erbrich definitely getting into shot as we follow through the shots of our leaders. We're going to switch back down to the battle in 8th place, Brambilla and Niles. It looks like Niles is going to be trying to get onto that the back of that white and blue red dashed NSX in front. They're going to make their way through the curves. We see Niles getting a little bit of the grass on his tires as he goes eagerly through the apexes as well. They're going to swing wide before getting around to Dunlop, which is a bit of an awkward angle. You got to make sure you don't come too wide on the exit, and he's managed to do just that, but definitely not the faster line coming through. Brambilla and the Degners going to be the next point to call before making their way under the bridge and on the way down towards the hairpin. So Suzuka, one of these tracks, you can just see how narrow it is. I mean, you can barely fit 2 of these GT3 cars side by side on any parts of the circuit. So doing that whilst carrying a lot of pace and momentum, which is what Suzuka does bode towards, is going to be a tough call to make moves happen. But we've seen it happen already. We've seen the fights occur. Generally, it's where someone has, made a bit of an error and you've managed to get past. There is that big west straight to also try and use some slipstream down. Jardia had a terrible start. He started in pole and lost positions into curve 1 and 2, and then unfortunately had a big off and started all the way back down the order. So he has been into the pits. So you can see he's done his mandatory pit stop. Currently running around in 24th position, along with a couple of the guys that did go into the pits early on. So everybody else in front of him still going to have to go into the pits. So it's not over until the very end. And with pace that Jardia has, there's definitely going to be a chance as Josef Varga going to be trying a move on Louis Alexander, that 666 on the outside. Oh, this is not a place that you want to go through 130R. And going to back off Varga, doing the smart thing as they make their way down to the chicane. And you know what? Sometimes you got to back out and decide that the next lap is where you're going to try it. And you get braver and braver and braver and braver. And hopefully at some point you get it done. But it's always smart driving that you like to see. And backing out of battles that are going to end in, crashed off cars is part of being in the pro division.
Yeah, absolutely. We like to see these guys, kind of stay patient. I mean, don't take me wrong, it's a 60-minute race. It's a pretty quick one, as we're actually seeing him try to make the move come out of the second curve here. They're going to come into the S's a little side by side. It looks like Varga is going to slide that car back in there before they start reaching into the curves too much here. Get into that 20th position. So that said, move done by him. And that's exactly what George is talking about, right? We saw him dip out just before 130R, realize it's a very dangerous place to try and pass somebody and, be patient. A few turns later, a little bit of a mistake, and he's able to slide on past. So we're going to switch back over now to Lauren here, who I believe we just saw in the 8th position recently, if I'm not mistaken. So I think he's made up a position, and this train of cars is still fighting here. There's 3 or 4 of these guys, and he is all over the back of Eastwood and about just a couple tenths back, and they're going to come into 130R. We'll see if he's able to get a run. We can see that slipstream doing work for him. But how will he do coming out? Looks like he slows down a little too much, so probably not this lap coming into the chicane, but again, perhaps the next lap, as we see a car off track here ahead. He's going to rejoin safely there, but I think...
Mame is a back marker. It's
a back marker?
He's running in 26th, yeah.
Okay. So just maybe perhaps getting out of the way or missed his braking point a little bit, but good on him to make sure he is rejoining the track safely. Don't get in the way of the cars coming across. And a little bit of again, Eastwood, we just see these guys coming into first and second curve there. They're getting loose almost every lap, and Loring is able to close back up just that extra tenth or two as they're now coming through the S's, and we'll see maybe he can get something done in the Degners or perhaps the hairpin coming up here shortly.
Yeah, Eastwood is definitely going to have a bit of a handful on his plate if he has the battle to defend for behind. He's got Brambilla and Loring obviously right on his... if he makes one slight error coming up to the hairpin, at any point here, he could potentially lose 2 positions, and the leapfrog effect happens when the driver in front has battles to deal with behind the third car in the pack. The Simon effect, as I like to call it. The third car in the pack likes to leapfrog the 2 cars battling in front. They generally get a bad exit, trying to give each other room, and that third car generally manages to sneak up there. So that's a good place for Brambilla to be in that number 7 to 7. Loring also obviously going to be happy right up the back of Eastwood as they come down to 130R. Going to go side by side, not quite side by side. They will go side by side here, forcing Eastwood to be on the inside. Loring on the outside, and this is the move that we said would be dangerous. And that's going to send Eastwood off the side. Stewards are going to be looking into this one. and sort of licking their chops to investigate that kind of a matter that we've seen on stream. And Brambilla, there we go, the Simon effect going to take course. And Brambilla going to get the run down past Lorenk off of stream as we run back to... Is Yamas also going to try and get into this battle? It looks like he is. I mean, Yamas is on the back of Brambilla and Lorenk again. So it looks like Lorenk is going to have to settle back. There may also be under investigation from the stewards. Himself and Clintwood, Eastwood didn't have too much space between each other going into 130R. Thomas, you said it before, it's not a place you want to overtake.
Yeah, after watching a few people kind of come out of that area, I think he had seen that as well and decided instead of going up on the inside, he would try it on the outside and see if he would give in. But of course, he had that position in the first place and he wanted to keep it. It was almost a shame because you could see that Eastwood was Eastwood was really struggling with the traction on the car. He was coming out of corners and spinning the rear tires, coming into the corners and losing the rear end, losing the front end, and you could see in the car and we've got a car stopped at the end of the Degners, and we're just about to see a replay. This is of the Mike Jones Racing Academy team. Let's see what he can put up to this situation. So they're going really close up past the S's, coming up to the Degners now.
Yeah, I think he got involved in this kind of the back end of it, but we should see him. I mean, there's going to be this car kind of, he stopped and he pulled forward just a little bit there, I think trying to get off the track, and it was just not enough. Of course, Ishmael did tag him with his right front there, and of course we don't know quite what happened to the car to have him spin out there, but he kind of stopped, tried to let people go by. Unfortunate for Ishmael, will take potentially a little bit of damage there. We'll see how that affects his races. He was coming back up the field. He had worked himself back up, currently in 14th position from the spin out earlier. He has been making up positions really well, so hopefully that damage won't affect him too much, if at all, and he'll be able to keep climbing there.
As we're back with Zeljko Madzo, is that how you say that name? I'm sorry for butchering your name, but that's WR Japan Racing Honda. So a man very much at home in his Honda NSX in Japan. This should be a really good race for him. As we have Jardier, or Honzik, as he is his real name, is actually going to start making positions up on people that haven't made their pit stops yet. So that's really good for his strategy in the future, and hopefully should give us a bit of insight as to, once we see how close he is to the leaders, we can see how far upfield he's going to go. Maybe he has a bit of a chance as we're getting close to halfway. Oh, as he tags the car ahead. That's Mazzo now behind. He's now spun. I wonder what the stewards will think of that as we look at a quick replay. It looks like the Japanese driver got held up by the car ahead. Jardier wasn't quite expecting it and just, I would like to say, perfectly pit maneuvered the car ahead without causing too much damage. But we'll see what the stewards have to say. Probably won't be too happy with that, as he's trying to get to the front of the field after starting in pole position with a fantastic qualifying lap. But this race, just like Spa, a Spa 2-hour start of the race wasn't going so well. Sadly for him, it's only an hour race and not a second hour for him to grab so many positions back. As we head back to 7th place now with Martin Lorenk, as he's getting closer to Brambilla. Brambilla has been taking very opportunistic moves, and now Lorenk is going to try and have his own back. And we've actually now jumped on board with 2nd place Alexander Weitzel. I cannot see how far away he is from the leader. Can someone else take that away from me, please?
Looks like about 2 to 3 seconds, depending on what part of the track he's on. They've been jiggling up a little bit.
I was going to give you an update. 3.8 seconds behind the leader at the current point. So Manu is definitely getting a bit of a runaway here up at the front. Prediction of the pace coming out and boding true. So Manu, who did look hot in qualifying and didn't quite get to secure the podium or the pole starting position, definitely having a good run with 30 minutes left on the clock. Still halfway into the race for these guys to endure. Still pit stops to be done from pretty much 1st down to 18th place at this point in time. So anything can change up. People could have mistakes with their pit strategies. They may have, an error and miscalculated something or clicked something on that they didn't want to, or repaired damage that they didn't intend to, and it can change up the order entirely. So pit stops are the exciting time, and coming into the halfway mark, I'm sure that quite a few guys would be looking to probably make their pit stops if they, got some free air to do so.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of these guys pit soon. That said, I don't think Manu is going to want to pit soon. He is still gaining time on the guys behind. I just don't think he has a reason to pit and put himself potentially back into the field before the guys behind him pit. As we just crossed the halfway mark, you will hear the announcer there say, and I'm thinking the same here about Vincent Urbich. He is also gaining time. He's gaining like anywhere between 2 and 5 tenths a lap on second place. Weitzel struggling a little bit here as the race goes on, losing just a bit of time, putting down respectable lap times to be fair, but just not quite as fast as the guys around him. As we're again going to go back to this 7th place battle, 7th place fighting for 6. And as somebody said in chat earlier, apparently this guy is his name is pronounced Lawrence, not Loring. So thank you for that, whoever said that. So we appreciate that. Again, like we said earlier, we try with the names, guys. We do, but any pronunciations help.
That is that is an amazing correction there. So Loring is Lawrence, and completely gonna apologize on my side for also butchering the name. Like Mike said earlier on in the stream, we will be getting better as the league progresses. Names come up, and even names that we have had before are always a little bit of a curb to try and get right. So, at the end of the day, it's these guys are all in the Proteus splits, and they do deserve their moment to shine. So apologies on that front, and Lawrence having a great run in 7th place, that number 171, chasing down Brambilla for 6th place. Louis Alexander in 19th is going to be getting himself a little bit of free air here, currently caught up in a bunch of drivers that have actually been into the pits. Jardier, he's going to still be making his way through the order, taking down drivers that have yet to do their pit stop. So he's already been into the pits, been off the track, and on the inside of Varga, going into Dunlop, gonna get the move done. Jardier showing why his class is there, and we said it's going to be difficult to overtake on Suzuka, and Jardier proving us all completely wrong. It's pretty simple. I mean, we just saw it get done right there, Mike.
It's just that simple. You just go, hey, I'm going to pass this guy, and he puts it on the inside, and he takes the position. Because that's how Jardier works. That man is just here. He is just an absolutely amazing driver. The man just throws down every single position he can. As we're seeing a couple of the pit stops here, we're currently watching Manu, who of course was running in the lead, making his pit stop just against my prediction there, of course. As I would say earlier, I don't think he'll pit yet, and then of course he pits. So that will put Weitzel back up into P1 provisionally for the time being. Of course, he will later need to pit, and that will happen here at some point. And we are, I believe, just a quick note real quick, our stewards were having just a little bit of issues perhaps, but we are getting some of our stewarding done now. Penalties being applied for some of the previous collisions and stuff. Car 818, you may have just seen in 23rd position there, did get a drive-through for taking out car 91, who is currently in 14th position. Of course, 23 already made his pit stop, which is probably why he's a little farther back. So we're going to see some of the stewardings come through here momentarily, guys, just to answer some of the questions in the chat as well. We do have live stewards for this race. They do have to review every incident manually. Sometimes it can be a little awkward. Having done some live stewarding myself, it gets a little odd sometimes with how the broadcasting, the replays work, but they are doing their best to get things done. Don't you worry.
Zeman and Doricott here, Mike,
so
are having a scrappy battle through the hairpin, and the splitter cam up front of the NSX just showing how close these guys get to one another during some of the sections of this track. Through to 200R, they're not going to get the move done just yet. Lawrence, he's got Brambilla in sight as they make their way down the West Straight. And of course, these two have been setting up for something. They're coming up to 130R. Lawrence going to look like he wants to get something done. But, you know, it's just a little bit of mine. Ooh, coming down towards the chicane, though. Is he going to try around the outside, inside? Brambilla going defensive and saying nope to Lawrence. You're going to have to wait. But the run coming out as Brambilla decides, I don't want to have this battle anymore. I'm going to dive into the pits. Lawrence given, you know, a position that he probably would have taken on the exit of that corner. And Brambilla not going to give him the satisfaction. Going to go into the pits, as it will be Yamas now on the back of Lawrence, who of course has been fighting with Brambilla. So that's allowed Yamas to close back up to get himself into that fighting position. So Lawrence going to hold temporarily on to 4th place, as of course the pit stops will continue to come in. We've seen our leader Manu jump into the pits already, so he's back out on track, of course, with his pace before. It'll be interesting to see if he you know, maintains similar pace coming out. Witzel going to stay out for a little bit longer up at the front, of course, going to extend his stint and maintain a bit of a gap, hoping that Manu gets caught up in traffic behind and he can maybe benefit out of staying out a little bit longer. But Zeman is going to still be holding off on Yamas. Oh, is this Doricart and Zeman?
Yeah, it's Doricart, yep.
Yeah, this is Doricart.
Yeah, Yamas is ahead of them, though. He is within a couple tenths there ahead of them. So this is actually a 3-car battle for 5th place going on as they're now coming out of the hairpin. And these guys are all reasonably close to each other. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yamas is 6 seconds ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, the red caught me off guard of the camera switch, and I was like, what happened to this car? But yeah, that's Doricart and Zeman and Doricart off camera. I was watching them fight about 10 minutes ago, and it was just as close as this. So they've continued to fight it out, and of course, fighting in dirty air and trying to, you know, carry speed into braking zones is going to be something that you have to learn each race against each driver that you're fighting against. And it's all good racecraft to see guys driving at such extreme limits so close together, and giving the viewers something good to watch with 23 minutes left of the race to go.
Yeah, and this is still, I mean, like we said, this is almost 40 minutes into the race at this point, and these guys are having to go defensive into the into the first curve here. Zeman gonna go for that outside line, as there is Doricart on the inside. He's actually just gonna get the move done. Zeman got a little squirrely there, it looks like, and Doricart is gonna work his way into that 6th position, being very patient, making his move when Zeman made the mistake. And that's going to work him back up. And now, potentially, if he can get the pace down here, they're still about 7 to 8 seconds behind Lawrence up there in what is provisionally 4th position. You know, we'll see if he can make up some time. Of course, if you guys notice on the leaderboard to the left there, everybody with a 1 beside their name, that yellow 1 means they have not pit. That means that Manu, Jardier, actually, if you'll notice, in 2nd position again after the pit, and Vincent Urbich back in what would be provisionally 3rd after the pit positions. Jardier, I can't believe this guy has made up this much time. Do you see this, George?
Yeah, I mean, Jardier doesn't excite me as much as two brothers battling on pack, because Jardier is going to do insane alien things all the time. But is this? I mean, I just assumed it's a brothers battle going on, or a relatives battle going on. Dustin Vust and Steven Vust on track, similar cars, you know, matched up against each other. And right now, it is the battle for that elusive top 10. You know, if you're sitting in 11th, you're just outside that running order. You want to get into 10th. And that's exactly what Dustin will be trying to do. Steven Vust going very wide coming into Spoon and getting the back kicked out. Oversteer saying, hey, what's up? And Dustin not able to capitalize on it right away. And Steven doing a good job to just cover that inside line on the exit of Spoon. And that's compromised Dustin a bit. Hasn't allowed him to get on to the back of him for the West Straight. And 130R will be comfortably, in his own proximity at social distancing range. But Dustin will be trying to close that up all the time as the two of them go into the chicane to come around and complete their 18th lap and begin their 19th lap here.
Social distance racing, Georgia. They would say stay 6 feet apart from each other, but Dustin here really wants to get up there and make that about 6,000ths of a second at best. As we're seeing these brothers just battle pretty hard. We see this quite often with these guys. They participate in our races quite often. They are always battling each other. They seem to have a very consistent pace between the two of them. They're always up here fighting, and it's always a good watch with them as we're seeing this front splitter cam come through the S's, and Dustin he's closing up. I mean, backing off, just like closing up and backing off a little bit. I think he is waiting for another mistake from Steven, just like we saw in the Spoon last lap, and we will see if he is able to pounce on that next mistake, as he is about maybe 2/10 or so back from this guy, and they have the potential to really make this interesting and get up into that 10th position. Actually, now that there's another pit, they are currently in the provisional 10th position, 9th and 10th. As we're going to switch back over to another fight here going on in the S's. We're back to Brambilla with, I believe that's Stephen Key above him. Stephen Key above him. And Brambilla, we've been watching on and off through this race. This guy has been fighting tooth and nail for every position that he can through this race, and this is with pit stops taken into account here, he potentially could be in the top 10 depending on how long the pit stops are, and they are fighting for positions as they're coming through the Degners here, getting very close to the back of the 26P there, and they're going to come down to the hairpin. He might try to go for the outside here. He's got a little bit of a run, but backs off a little bit, decides to try it another day. Oh, and Key's going to go wide, and there it is. Brambilla gets the move done. And again, we're seeing this man take a position, and he is going to try and step off into the distance there because he wants to get away from him and get into some clean air and get some laps down. And here we are, back to the West brothers briefly, seeing them still battle. But now we're looking at Jardier and Vincent Urbich here coming into the final chicane. This is a battle for the provisional second position, and there goes Jardier still staying in second place. But that said, we do have to look at that DT there on the side as Jardier comes down in the pits. It would seem that the accident he was involved in earlier, he did get deemed at fault from the stewards. So that is going to put him back at least a few positions and give Urbich some clean air in that provisional second place and see if he can chase down Manu here. And that's unfortunate for him. He's had the penalty and the accident early on in the race, but hey, that's racing for him, and Jardier will not give up. For these last 18 minutes, he's going to fight tooth and nail to get back into position as much as he can, George.
Yeah, and I mean, he's proven that, he's got the pace to stay on track and make up positions regardless of where he comes out. So, serving the drive-through penalty, which, is part of the live stewarding process and getting it underway as soon as possible. Going to get back out on track and get himself some more action. Steven Wurst and Dustin Wurst, they're going to continue their battle on track for that current 10th and 11th position. Obviously, pit stops still to be made and things to be changed up the order for now. Zeman and Dorikat will still be changing positions over this time. Dorikat is going to hold off on Zeman coming through into 130R. They're not going to be doing anything untoward at this point in the race, as once again, I've said it, they have definitely worked into one another's rhythms. Racing for this long with a car at the similar levels of race pace that these two have sort of displayed here tonight has definitely kept them well entertained. I'm pretty sure that they don't even realize that there's only 16 minutes of this race remaining. When you get into these kind of battles on track, those hour-long races just melt away.
Yeah, they really do. I mean, you get up behind somebody. I remember racing, I was at Silverstone about a month ago or so, and I was racing this guy really closely for, it must have been about 40 minutes. It felt like it took about 8 minutes. Just all that, just really close racing. So, we'll see if Zeman is able to make up this position. Of course, they still do have to pit as well, so we will see a pit stop come through for these guys at some point here. And just another little quick note from the stewards. Looks like Ishmael, who got taken out, or he was involved in that incident earlier in the race, coming around the curves. The car that caught into him, the 17 car, did get a drive-through for that. That was the car, I believe, that was the car that was sideways in the Degner and kind of pulled out into Ishmael a little bit there. But so stewards on top of that as well. looks like Mr. Boswell is typing up another penalty right now for us potentially as well. But hey, guys, in the meantime, just while let's say a clear moment as this battle is still ongoing, we really appreciate all of the follows. I saw somebody joined in with a raid with a few people. Really appreciate that. Of course, keep them up. You can subscribe to us using Twitch Prime, Amazon Prime if you have that, or hey, just subscribe in general. That helps pay for our server costs and, allows us to do these races, full commentary, full live stewarding, and host all of these. Actually, I'm going to break off for a second here as Brambilla is getting very close to the side of Jardier here, and it doesn't look like Jardier is going to let that move get done. I would expect nothing less from Jardier. He will defend that position to the last. It looks like he came out of that drive-through, obviously a few positions back, but we'll see if he's able to continue on here and make up these positions. So hopefully, Jardier being a strong contender like he is, like I said, he's not going to give up. He's going to keep pushing. He's a few seconds back off of the deck right now and in front of him. And I'm sure that will close up here shortly. And him and Brambilla will have another car to add to this fight here in a couple of laps, I promise.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed. Due to there being it being a one-car league, the BOP of the vehicle, so where you have like a Ferrari that's really good in like mid-corner, and you have the Mercedes really good at traction out of the corner. We're not having this here, so overtaking is done on an opportunistic in a way. And one thing I'm really appreciating from these pro drivers and really learning from them is the way that they're able to intimidate the car in front of them, the way that they can make them push a bit harder and brake a bit later into each of the braking zones, the way they maneuver their cars in defense and attack, the way that they can intimidate each other into making these little mistakes is why we're seeing the incidents that we're seeing. A lot of them aren't due to incompetence in the driver themselves, but it's how hard they're pushing each other is how we're seeing this happening. But one thing I'm noticing as well is how Jardier isn't really taking notice of the fact there's someone behind him. He's just being really cautious on his driving line, make sure he's hitting his apexes, even going a little slower than the cars around him just to make sure that he's hitting exactly where he needs to go to make sure no one else can get past him. And it seems to be working well for him so far. Even though he's at the drive-through, he's still holding up in a pretty good position. So we're waiting for 8 more cars to go into the pits now. As I'm seeing, we have another drive-through for Lawrence. He was doing pretty well. Not quite sure what that for.
You got a drive-through for taking out the number 24 car, I believe, from our stewards. So that's going to be unfortunate for Lawrence. He was having a good run and going to have to serve one of those infamous drive-through penalties and drop down the order, unfortunately. Christian Manu, of course, was the race leader going into the pit stops, pitted quite early on, and really waiting to see if he comes on out. Alexander Witzel has continued to just drive on out. I mean, there's only 12 minutes of this race remaining, still needs to go into the pits. So, I mean, that car's, ready to pit at any point. And I think it's been a good strategy for Witzel at the moment. He hasn't come into contact with too many back markers and, just sort of had a good race out at the front. Hasn't had to factor in a need to pit early on in response to anything that the leaders were doing, and has just had a good race out there, and hopefully will come out in second place or get a podium position at the end of it. That's the gamble that you're taking.
Yeah, interestingly, we noticed, as we said, Manu was the provisional pole position with the pit stops happening, and I'm seeing Luca Burke now has pitted and is now a couple tenths above him, which is a little surprising to me. Luca must have just one hell of a pit stop to come out ahead, so we'll see how that shakes up over the next 10 minutes or so, as obviously we only have 12 minutes left in this race, as there's a car going wide here in the first curve. I believe that was potentially Stephen Key. No, it was Nicola Roccia. No, Nicola Roccia made up the position. Yeah, so it was Key, went a little wide there and lost a position to Roccia in the R Racing Team 85. And he is going to potentially get back up and fight for that top 20. Of course, this battle will be ongoing as we, again, a car that we have seen just so many times today. We have Jardier and Brambilla still following each other. I'm almost wondering here, George, I'm curious to your opinion. So Brambilla is following Jardier here. Do you think, with 11 minutes left in the race, do you think he's really trying to fight Jardier for position, or do you think that they're just trying to push catch the cars in front of them so they can get a little bit of a fight rather than fighting and staying back here in what could be 15th position once the pit stops are done.
I think that at the end of the day, racing drivers are racing drivers. I think if Jardier gives Brambilla the opportunity, he's going to take it. Jardier is not doing that, and you can see Brambilla closing down quite often onto Jardier, which is just in response to Jardier taking it easy, staying defensive, and not letting Brambilla get the run down into any of the corners. So pretty much keeping him at bay. Brambilla probably, in his mind, if he can't get the move done, will eventually just decide, gonna settle into pace and see if, can make my way through the pack alongside here. But you see how Brambilla just a little bit better on the brakes coming into the chicane, can brake a little bit later there. And I think that's the advantage of being the follow car. If the car in the front, you kind of got your eyes on, the track in front, plus being aware of the car behind wanting to make a move. So you're always setting yourself up to stay defensive, and you're not focused on 100% of your racing line. So that advantage coming out to Brambilla here is going to be there, but it will be a question of, will he be able to get by? I do not think there is a mutual agreement of we're going to make our way through the order like this. Brambilla is definitely indicating that he wants to get by, but I mean, look at Suzuka. There's just no way to do it.
And especially following a man like Jardier. I mean, as we've been talking about since we were looking at this battle, Jardier is we're going to see a little bit of a move here going to the hairpin actually, just to break off. Manu is going to look like, is that Burke behind him there now? I believe the quality of yeah, that is Burke behind him. So that is now Burke losing that provisional P1 position, and Manu going to make his way back up there. So. That's interesting. I'm not quite sure as to what Manu or how Burke got up there to begin with. Obviously, I think it was a good pit stop, but we're going to see a little bit of battle going here. It looks like Rochia made up a little bit of, and there's going to be some contact, actually. Rochia did make up that position, a little bit of contact there. Not sure what car it was that hit him. I believe it was the 91 of Vaughn's. Yes.
Yeah.
And so the stewards, I'm sure, will take a look at that, see as to, if they think that Vaughn's broke a little too late there and tagged him, or if Rochia kind of cut down on him a little bit. We'll get a report back on that shortly, I'm sure. But unfortunate for him, he was having a good run there, catching up to people. So, but now back over to Brambilla and Jardier here. We have now seen they have caught the man in front of them. The deck now going to be under fire from these two drivers who are absolute putting down blistering lap times. Jardier on his last lap putting down a 2:02, man in front putting down a 2:03, almost a second faster, as they're now coming across the timing line again for lap, what is this now, lap, I have lost track of the laps. I believe this is lap 25. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, and so these guys now, with 8 minutes to go, they're going to continue fighting for these positions. So Dedek now under fire, joining this fight of Jardier and Brambilla. We'll see how long he is able to hold these guys off, if he can make it another 7.5 minutes and hold down his position. We've got a couple more pit stops to go here, so we'll see the order shake up just a little bit on the overall standings over the next few minutes, and see if these guys get into trouble with lap traffic coming out of the pits as well, because that is entirely possible. Not necessarily even lap traffic, but get added to the cars as they come across and out of the pits if they join this fight.
This is the worst place to be for Dedek. Like right now, it's like 6 minutes to go to hold on to your P15, or potentially lose out 2 positions to 2 drivers who are most definitely making up time. And the 2 of them are going to be most certainly in the agreement right now that they can get past the deck together. Regardless of what they'll do after this, the 2 of them know that with a slower car on track, and the deck seems to be suffering with a little bit of that understeer coming out and struggling into the corners. So we just got to see how the runs come out, and they're going to come down onto the west straight again. I mean, it's a sight that we've seen repeated a couple of times coming down to this. It's getting closer, a bit spaced out between Honzik and Brambilla. Jardier managing to hold Brambilla at bay for 130R, and Dedek getting himself a bit of breathing room as well. So coming into the chicane, Brambilla with a bit of a dive down the inside, gonna try around the outside, inside. I'm not sure if he cut. We're gonna go over to the helicam because we couldn't quite capture that. Gonna try all around the outside, a bit of contact. gonna try and squeeze himself through, and it looks like he has managed to get that move done, right? He has done it on the exit.
Yeah,
It does
what
look
a
like,
move. We've seen him
whoa,
just break so
Brambilla.
hard into those corners, George. Like, he finally got it done.
We did say he was braking later, and this time around, he saw that Jardia was covering the inside line, and what a place to do it. He goes wide on the outside, gives himself the inside line, and then carries just a little bit of extra speed. So Jardia going to be bullied out of position there by a brilliant bit of driving coming out from Brambilla. And up front, Tadek is going to be smiling because the battle that those two have given each other has given a little bit more space. But Stephen Key and Rachia are going to be once again involved on-screen battles. We see the lights flashing from behind as Rachia flashes at Key and says, you know what, I want to get by, I feel like I'm faster, and I'm going to intimidate you with my flashing lights. And that's kind of something that we see all the time. Stephen Key going to be forced wide. Is he going to lose it through the second Degna? I think he will lose out the position there. So Rachia making use of those pressure point driving techniques that we talked about, forcing people to make those errors. I'm going to slide on by and take the position off of Key, who again goes wide through their hairpin, so not going to give himself much of a chance to fight back on the run down to Spoon.
Yeah, and it looks like that Key is just going to take off here. Like, look at that distance already. He's already getting up a couple tenths. So we're now going to switch over to, looks like, the battle for what could potentially be second place. Burbage has closed up on Burke. We saw Manu slide past him earlier. There's Luca Burke, not quite as fast as these leaders, so his pit strategy doing him really well at this point. But he has 4 minutes to defend against a man as fast as Vincent Urbich. And actually, I don't think we're going to see much more. He's going on the inside across these across the Degners here coming in. Vincent's going to be on the outside, but the move is already done. Burke falling back to what could be third position in the end here. Urbich making that move, and he has 4 seconds to make up on this leader here in 4 minutes, George. I don't know if he can do it, but we'll see.
Oh, I mean, that's it's a bit of a tall ask on that, but, you know, anything is possible and anything can happen to cars running on the order right until that final flag is waved at the end, as we see Lawrence going side by side through the S's. This is not a place you want to go side by side, backing out eventually. Lawrence doing the smart thing there and not wanting to risk things right at the end of a 1-hour stint. Into the S's, single file they go. Once again, I see that Vance does have a drive-through penalty. That number 91 has been awarded a drive-through penalty for taking out the number 85. And Richter also on that timing sheet, the number 39 with a drive-through penalty. Don't have any insights onto what that one is for at the moment. It could be track limits, so 100% could be down to track limits. You've got the warnings there in place, and if you've exceeded them, which it's easy to do at Suzuka, you know, the track limit warnings are there. Drive-through penalties with 3 minutes to go, or call it 2 minutes 26 to go, are definitely something I'm not going to put onto a Christmas list.
Absolutely not, no. And this is going to really excite Lawrence here because he does have someone closing up behind him. And we've seen Lawrence try to overtake Bonds here a couple times. Oh, as we're seeing the man behind him, Rochia, actually going a little wide there into the first corner of the Spoon. And he's actually going to get a little bit of a run coming out. So while we are going to probably see Bonds break off this lap to serve that drive-through, Rachia is going to go onto Lawrence here, and he was looking coming into 130R, but he's not going to make the move there. But that said, he does make the move coming out of it. He's going to be on the outside here coming into the final chicane. We just saw this happen a moment ago with Jardier, but he is not able to get the move done in this case. Going to have to fall back in line behind Lawrence there, and we actually see Vaughn staying out. Of course, these guys will only have 1 more lap remaining. I'm wondering if these guys at this point will just take the penalty for not serving a drive-through and try and stay out on the track. I don't remember offhand what that penalty is for not serving the drive-through, but that battle is going to stay hot with those 3 cars. As we know. Go ahead.
Witzel has a drive-through penalty as well. Ooh. So he's done his pit stop, come out in second place, but been given a drive-through penalty.
It looks like that's track limits, as I don't see him involved in anything, and there are no reports from the steward, so he must have cut the track. Just so the guys know that don't race ACC as much, you get 3 warnings on track limits, and once you pass that warning mark, you will get a drive-through penalty by the game, and the stewards will not clear those. So that is track penalty limits, the same thing as Richter there that we think has gotten a drive-through penalty because of that. That's going to be unfortunate for Witzel there because he was in an excellent position as the leader. Now coming to the final lap.
He's going to go into his final. It's Witzel that's on the final lap as well, and more contact being seen there as the steward's going to be kept busy coming into the post-closing race. I just want to talk about what Witzel's done here in first. I mean, he's got a drive-through penalty, gone onto the last lap, not been able to serve it there, so that's going to obviously go to post-race, results. Thomas, you might have a little bit more insights onto that side of thing from the stewarding point of view?
Yeah, I believe if you don't serve a drive-through by the end of the race, it adds 80 seconds onto your time. So to take the drive-through is actually far more beneficial than going to the end of the race and just taking the time penalty.
Yeah, unfortunately, no quarter for him there. He was not given a chance as it came across on the last couple laps here, but we're going to see these guys go side by side in the first corner. A little bit of contact there as Niles is forced off the track, and he's going to fall back behind Ismail here. Ismail making his way up into what actually will end up potentially being 8th position with the penalties, but for now, a provisional top 10, as we do see Dorcut has a stop-and-go 30 penalty.
He hasn't even done a pit stop there either, like a mandatory stop.
Yeah, I think maybe he sped through the pits, and he's not in the pits now, so he may not have actually done his stop, but Weitzel now is coming across Spoon. We are going to see this. This is our provisional leader. Of course, he does have that penalty to take care of, but Mikowski, that said, this man who we saw earlier in the race fall back in the order, Manu and Urbich doing all sorts of work. Mikowski may end up getting the victory here in the end, as Weitzel is going to come into the final chicane with that drive-through penalty still active. We'll have to see these post-race results, but Weitzel is going to come out of the final chicane. He's going to come down the start-finish straight, and he is actually going to try and serve his drive-through now. I don't know if that will clear him or not, but he is going to take that risk as Mikowski is going to come across, get that P1 across the starting line. Congratulations to him. We're going to see Manu come in a second, and of course, Vincent Urbich should take the provisional 3rd position. Yes, there he is. He will take the 3rd position. Burke coming across the line, going to be in 4th. Good pit strategy by him to make up those positions. We'll have to see what will happen with Weitzel here. It looks like there is a penalty.
He still gets the penalty and does the drive-through.
Unfortunate for him, but so that will
he was given a lap to still be, go into the pits before the final lap to serve it. So it wasn't like it was handed to him without being able to go and serve it. So he's taken a massive gamble going all the way to the end there. But a massive change of the order right at the end, which, changes the way that the cookie crumbles at the end of the day. And that will be racing. And that's what makes things so much more excitable, is that it doesn't matter, come across the line. There's always some things that need to be sorted out, and if you haven't served a penalty, that's going to affect the running order at the end of the day.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot of post-race shakeup here in the order. Obviously, we have just a lot of people who got drive-throughs there towards the end. There were a couple accidents there, people assigned penalties because of that, and of course, the couple people who got drive-throughs due to track limits. As we're seeing the last couple cars start to come across the start-finish line here. Here's Bonds, who is going to make his way out of the final chicane in the provisional 20th position, so likely that will be closer to 17th. As we're seeing the 2 cars behind him also come across the start line, and here is our leaderboard for the moment. As we can see, provisionally, Mikowski, Manu, and Urbich, podium positions. Those should be locked in as there are no penalties there, but we will see the rest of the order after the stewards work out the final results and we get that uploaded. But it looks like that unfortunate for I lost track of his name already. The man Weitzel, who had an excellent race towards the start, of course, getting that penalty. He looks like he's provisionally dropped down to P18 there, George.
Yeah, that is a massive change up of things. So Mikowski, great drive coming out and getting first. Manu, I believe, second, and Ulrich getting 3rd place there. So at the end of the day, an interesting finishing lineup, which wasn't what we saw coming in from qualifying, which is always something that you want to see. That's a bit of a stab at the F1 fans. You know, I'm also an F1 fan, but GT3 racing on RLM is far better, and you know, F1 isn't actually happening. So definitely a good way for me to spend an evening with you gents. I've had a great race here at Suzuka, and it's also been great to have you here with us, Thomas. And I just want to commend you on a great job here on the commentary side of things.
Oh, well, thank you very much, George. I was quite worried and nervous coming into this. As you guys have talked to me before, I do talk quite a lot, but who knows whether I'd be any good at commentary. Found my hand in stewarding here at RLM, and I always wanted to give commentary a go. And I'm very thankful that this was my first race, such an interesting and quite action-packed race. Actually, I'm looking forward to see what tomorrow brings and next Monday. There's going to be a lot of sore throats, I think, by the end of the week. But I'd like to say thank you very much for inviting me along. And what did you think of the race, Mike?
Oh, it was an excellent race. I mean, obviously, we saw a very action-packed race to start and down to the finish. So, be very interesting to see. Of course, we're back in 2 weeks, I believe, for the Pro Cup here, George. And then, of course, tomorrow is the Pro Am, and next week will be our Am race on the Monday. We're doing bi-weekly events here at our NSX Cup.
100%. There's plenty of action happening. If you guys want to jump over and join the Redline Motorsports Discord, that's where you can find pretty much all the info. If you are a Discord fundi, if you want to go over to the website, all the info there is there as well. We will see you guys we'll see you guys tomorrow, really, with the next NSX Cup.